Here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the PhD Survival Guide. That's today's title for the Postgraduate Support Group meeting. This is our second one for this year, and I thought it would be a wonderful way to start off our academic experience by hearing more about how others have managed to make it work and make it work well for them, or try to avoid the things that didn't make it to work very well for them. So I'm really hoping that you'd enjoy the content and participate in this, what's meant to be a very interactive discussion. I'm Lenin Liebenberg. I am an honorary associate professor at Caprisa. I am well outside of my my student years, but there've been times where it's a journey. I can't even explain my journey. There were many ups, there were many downs. I have students myself, and I can see them going through the same ups and downs that I had when I was a student. So as much as I could tell my students about, what to do, what not to do, what worked for me, sometimes it works better to hear from peers, people who are currently involved in that situation, or people who have just completed it, people who are more relatable. I mean, I'm 40 now, so I'm old to most of you, I guess. So I'm hoping that the session would be more relatable to more people who are currently experiencing the postgraduate journey. And each person's journey is different, and we appreciate those differences. And the point of the session is to learn from each other. And for those of you who have been part of our postgraduate support group meetings before, you'll be well aware of how constructive, how interactive, how we try to lift each other up. This is not a judgmental space, and we are free to express ourselves as comfortably as we'd like. So to promote interaction within the session, feel free to raise your hand. You can type whatever you like, hopefully something supportive, constructive, any questions or comments within the chat box. You can use those reaction icons as well. Those are quite useful, just to show some support during the discussion. Okay, and with that, I have invited a few people who have either finished their postgraduate degrees, or who have just submitted, or who are currently pursuing it. This would either be a master's or PhD, or now currently a postdoc. And this is just to start a discussion about what are the challenges that you are experiencing? How can we bypass those? How can we grow from them? What sort of support would you need during your PhD or your master's, your postgraduate experience? How can we help each other to not make things as lonely as it can be sometimes during a postgraduate journey? I can't remember who I invited, but I do remember Fayaz is here. And I'm going to invite you then, Fayaz, to please open the floor. If you're comfortable enough, sharing your experiences with this group. Thank you and welcome. I'm so happy to see a new face in the support group.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so well, no pressure, but anyway, I'll begin. So yeah, as you said, this is just a discussion, so I actually didn't formally prepare anything. So at the top of my head, I mean, just like speaking, as you said, give our experiences. So you just mentioned that everyone's journey as a postgraduate is different. And I know one of the things that really got to me when I was doing my PhD was comparing my journey to other people's. I know, it may come a bit of it seems like okay, it's so unfair that I keep doing this, like repeating experiments, and some experiments takes longer than other people's, and they seem to just be progressing. So one of the first things I would say is don't compare your journey to someone else's. Is because everybody has different goals, different experiments, obviously different fields. So the first thing is like, don't compare. I mean, you need to have like, your own timeline. And I'm not saying obviously don't work towards it, work towards your goals, but don't compare yourself to like another student. That's the first thing I would say. Uh, in addition, I would say like plan experiments well. Because like sometimes it's easy to get in there, just say, okay, I'm going to do this. And at the end of it, you have a ton of data and you try to figure out where it's going to fit in. So for me, I feel like planning experiments is a good idea. And like to know, like have a specific focus. Okay, this experiment, what I can get out of it, and have like a plan in your mind of like, when you're writing your thesis, because you begin writing your literature review at the beginning. So that should already give you like insight, okay, like where I want to take my project. And thirdly, I know like, well, me personally, sometimes I felt like, I just want to avoid my supervisor. So, so it's like, sometimes you feel like, you didn't do like progress as well as you think in a week. And you're like, okay, I'm just going to avoid my supervisor this week. But I think like that interactions, the one-on-one interaction that you can get with your supervisor, go for that, because, many supervisors have a lot of students, and one-on-one time is like you don't get that opportunity like regularly. So like when you can, don't avoid it. Actually, it's very insightful. And okay, maybe I'm just going on, but anybody can offer anybody insights. You actually muted, Lenine.
You're welcome to
Okay.
continue. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that what you're going through, others have gone through or are going through. So your insights are being heard.
Okay. And yes, also, as I said, like plan experiments I found like it was very useful for me in that the data that I got, like from very early on into my PhD, I started preparing PowerPoint slides with data on it, and like dating it well, labeling it well, so that when it came towards the end, when I was actually writing up my PhD, I just went back and I easily selected, okay, this looks good, I could use that. So it's like these PowerPoints, when you do them like, regularly, it helps you, because now at the end, if you're just sitting with a chunk of data, do not know where to start, and you quickly like, we all have that feeling of when we're writing, we stress, we're not sure, like, the deadlines are approaching. So at least if you plan ahead and have these PowerPoints and your data on hand, you can just easily go back, like, okay, I remember this looked good, I'll use it. This doesn't look good, I won't use that. So I would say PowerPoints are helpful. And yeah, so, okay, that's all I can think of right now. I'm not sure if anybody has anything to add, or like we can open this discussion further.
I love you. I think that there's just too much to mention that I'd like to comment on. You touched on the relationship with your supervisor, the planning your experiments well, asking for feedback. I'm pretty sure we're going to hear a lot about that in the session. I see Tando Maseko has a hand up. Please share with us, Tando.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to start by adding to Fayaz that I also learned like, just writing up just even things like your analysis, what you corrected for, what you didn't, how you changed your analysis over time. Because I found that like when it came to writing in the end, it's so important to be able to track what you've done and how you done it. And like Fayaz was saying, kind of like keeping like certain results where you know that these are the ones that you'd like to include in your thesis, so that by the time that you're writing, you're not like looking for stuff. Oh, where was this document? Did I put it in that document? Did I present it in that conference? But actually it's all in a document where you can just extract and put it in your thesis. So I just wanted to say to Fayaz, hundreds. That one is such a helpful tip.
Cool. And I think, sorry, like another
No, go
thing
ahead.
is
No,
like,
you go ahead.
Like talking to your peers, there's a lot of the time, we work in a similar department, so we do similar things. And often we are faced with challenges that other people are currently facing, or they face and they manage to like overcome those challenges. So instead of like trying to optimize and like trying to find 100 papers to see why you got this result, maybe even if you speak to a peer, they'd be like, okay, I've done this, I had a similar experience, and this is what I found that helped to overcome that challenge. So like, I think speaking to your peers is one of the most valuable things that you can do.
Thank you so much for your insights, Fayaz. Again, I forgot who I asked, but I'm going to pick on Tando. Sounds like Tando has a lot to say. I'm curious. What's been your experience?
I think I'm going to go a bit differently to Fayaz, but we will like sort of touch on the same things. I think for me, I'm going to start by saying when you read more, you know more. I think this is something we often get like told by supervisors, by people around us, and it can actually be one of the most daunting and overwhelming things to do. But as you do it gradually, and I like these like pictures that people show of like when you take a step at a time, you grow your knowledge. So I just really wanted to I really found that for me, the more I read, the easier it became to write, because I wasn't waiting until I had to write a paper and then try to accumulate like 10,000 papers worth of knowledge at the same time, which can get really overwhelming. And I really found that that got a bit stressful. So part of, I think, my major points is really just realizing that PhDs are a marathon and not a race, and people always speak about how a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, but it also means that you progress a step at a day, and that you chew it little by little, you break it up, you take it in by pieces. And when I started my PhD, I thought, my word, 3 years is such a long time, but then it turned out to be so little. It turned out to be so little. And I learned the value of actually also in pacing yourself, realizing that progress is making work, but doing it consistently. But if you're not consistent, it gets very hard to hold yourself accountable, one, and it gets very hard to measure, like if you do a little bit here and then you take a break, you do a little bit there, what that often does is just make you feel overwhelmed. I think one of the things that I learned is to be versatile and to allow yourself to pivot. I think when I entered my PhD, I thought, these are my aims, these are my objectives, this is what I'm doing, I'm done, and wham, bam, did I get slapped in the face when things didn't work. Optimizations took long. Some things actually had to cut out my PhD because I just didn't finish optimizing, and in the beginning, I was like this girl that was like, I'm not changing, I'm going to optimize it until it works. And then I realized, actually, learn when to cut ties with something. It's okay. It's okay to put something down and pick something else up. It's all part of learning, and it all, in the end, makes you a better scientist, and it grows your experience. And also to start looking at things that don't work as opportunities for growth. One of the things that I learned is that the more things didn't work, the better I became at problem solving. Like Faz is saying that that's when you get to realize the value of knowing people, speaking to people, and knowing that things won't always work, but there are ways around it. And if it's time to let it go, let it go. Don't spend like half the time being distraught that something didn't work and then get bogged down and then get into a mental state because you feel like, oh, is it me? It's not you. Something's, it's science. Science is a risk. You can't anticipate the results. You find what you find, and that's what makes it exciting. But sometimes I think we think I can either get this and I can either get that. And if you don't find anything, you feel like, oh my word, is it me? And I just wanted to encourage someone that it's not you, even if someone else had tried, maybe it just wouldn't have worked. Or if it didn't work, that's also obviously worth reporting. But just also like the value of or just the point about not seeing negative results as something bad, or like you did wrong. I know I felt like that for a while when someone like in the beginning of my PhD, I'm like, is it because I'm inexperienced? And I don't know if there are people like me, but I started a whole new discipline for my PhD. I did my degree in biochem and microbiology, and this was a new thing. Clinical research was new. And in the beginning, I felt so overwhelmed. And I think that's why I really emphasize the point about PhDs being a marathon and not a race. I really felt overwhelmed. I felt anxious, that I felt like, maybe people will see that I don't know everything that they know. And that like what is general knowledge to everybody else isn't general knowledge to me yet. And so I really felt, some type of way about that. But I really learned, like I'm saying now, that a step at a time. I just really want to encourage someone who's really feeling overwhelmed, that take it step by step. The more you learn to be versatile and pivot and be patient with yourself and speak to other people around you, get advice, and it gets better over time. And also, like with these support group meetings, I've learned the value of a balanced life. It's so invaluable. Your value doesn't lie in your productivity. There's a stage in my life where I thought my value equals productivity. The more productive I am, the more I'm writing, the more I'm in the lab, the more I'm doing this is a measure of my my value. But I've come to realize that I'm a person and there's different aspects, and that I need to learn to balance all those things. But even with saying that, it's a marathon and not a race, there's still no substitute to adequate time and planning. Like time management, planning are really important. Setting deadlines, a deadline before the deadline. And I know sometimes, when I was younger, I'd listen to people say these things and I think, oh, these sound so cute. And I'm starting to realize now that I'm at the end of my PhD that people learn these things because they made mistakes. I made the mistakes, and that's why I feel like I can get to say that I'm learning these lessons, that I made the mistake of not prioritizing a balanced life. I made the mistake of not trying to read consistently. I made a mistake of trying to do work bit by bit by bit and not being consistent. And I really found that in the end, it didn't help me. I learned, I tried to be like a bit, not versatile, but I learned that I had to be versatile. So with anyone listening, I know it can sometimes feel like other people have it together, but it's actually a journey of growth, but also growth is intentional. You have to say to yourself, let me try it. And I know the school had these writing sessions, and one day I thought to myself, let me do it. It's just one day in a week, but then you do it another day in the week. Then you do it another day in the week. And before you know it, you've done like a week of consistent writing because you've committed to something. Progress is work plus consistency, but the consistency part is so important. And I also wanted to say, it's so important to invest in holistic growth. Disseminate your work, science is communication, go to a conference. The more conferences you go to, I've actually found, I used to be so afraid of going to conferences. Now I love them. I'm like, someone's going to give me a brilliant idea for future work in my work. Because, at the end, people are like, why don't you do this? Have you thought about that? I'm like, oh yeah, future work. Before you know it, that section in your PhD for future work or recommendations is starting to get filled up because from other people's ideas. So I think like the lens at which we look at conferences needs to change as people that are doing our degrees, and you grow in your confidence and you grow in your communication. Because if you can't communicate your science, then that also gets difficult. But the more you do it, the more confident you become. Also in applying for grants, that's something I didn't think about before I did my PhD, if I'm being honest. So things like that. I used to think that because I'm not like a senior scientist, I can't apply for a grant, but I realized that, there's a place for me too, applying for grants. And actually now I'm like, I'm keen, so whatever opportunity you get, try to apply for grants. Like the level of growth, holistic growth, holistic thinking brings you is honestly invaluable. Also, like for people that I'm fortunate that I have a supervisor who allows me to help co-supervise students. And it's honestly been a joy of my life because I love academia. So also I'm just trying to encourage someone that like, don't look at your PhD or your degree like with one lens, do as much as you can, get exposed to as much as you can. It's such a rewarding experience. Also, I'm one of those people that really love extra courses. Just because one, obviously, like I said, I came from a different discipline and they really just help fill the gaps. But also I found that even when I go to a conference, so many more things make sense because I've just made the effort to learn a bit more. If someone speaks about stats, I'm not trying to Google all the time, which I used to do, like, oh, this test, what is that? Oh, this, what is that? What is this? So, yeah, but I think my point is that PhD is a holistic journey. Don't look at it as just, I'm here to get it to do an experiment, write a lit review, do this, and I'm done, you know. But actually take it as a journey where actually, I don't know if you've seen those games where you go around collecting little bonuses. Though you're on the journey, you get to collect these bonuses, and don't miss out on those bonuses because they go a long way for the future. So I just really wanted to encourage someone, one, just in summary, I know I talk a lot, I love talking, to read more. There's no substitute for reading more. The more you read, the more you know. The more you know, the better you feel about writing, the better you feel about discussing your work, the better you feel about engaging other scientists in your field about your work. Progress means you have to be work, but work consistently so that you can be accountable and that you can sort of measure your progress. Also, there's value in learning to manage your supervisor. We did this course last year and I found that it was incredible. I honestly love support group meetings because they give me words to the things I didn't have words for. Learn to manage your supervisor. You have different personalities. Learn how to communicate. Learn how to manage each other's expectations. And yeah, I think I really made a blunder of this in the beginning of my supervisor and my relationship, because I hadn't learned how to manage them. I didn't even know that there was something called managing a supervisor. But as I grew, and that's why I'm also trying to encourage people to really attend support group meetings, because you grow so much more than, you know, it's like you get to accumulate more in an hour than you would in like 6 months, you know, because there's other people that have gone through the journey, that have seen it happen, and they're like, actually, these are the pebbles that I have to offer. It's a marathon and not a race. Be patient with yourself. Take a step at a time. Be versatile. Learn to pivot. It's okay if you have to start over sometimes. It's okay if things don't work. Just be patient. Things eventually work. You know, like it just feels like it's dark for that few month or two, but the light eventually comes. You know, after rain comes rainbow and sunshine, but you don't feel like that when you're in the rain. So just yeah, and that's why we also spoke about a balanced life, because actually a support structure is important. You know, when you feel like you're losing your mind, or you feel like you're entering a mini state of depression, which I sometimes felt, because I'd feel overwhelmed and I'd feel like I'm not enough, or I'd feel like, is it just not, am I not putting enough effort? Am I not doing enough when things aren't working? Then I realized, actually, take a break, stop, take a break, go speak to someone, do something fun, come back, and you feel invigorated and excited to do your work again. Attend small group meetings, please. I mean, support group meetings, they really, really go a long way. And just like invest in holistic growth. Whatever you can do that's not obviously gonna, I mean, obviously it's important to set boundaries and not to overwhelm yourself and do too much. But what you can do to invest in holistic growth, go for it. Take every opportunity to grow holistically. Thank you.
I think you need to write a book, man. You need a book. In fact, we need to make sure that you have a session within either this year, next year, whomever is going to have to listen point by point to what Thando has to say about the PhD experience. I don't even know where to begin. For anybody on the call right now, if what Thando and Fiaz was saying resonates with you, if there are challenges that they've discussed right now, put a thumbs up in the chat box. Just let me know that we're all on the same page here. These are real issues. They pop up so often. In fact, Thando, what I'm going to, you just volunteered to host a discussion about presenting at conferences. It's something that is so important. It helps you. It builds your CV. It helps you find your place. You know, you learn more about yourself when you're presenting your work. And there's a lot to that process that can be very daunting. And the way you spoke right now just made it seem so like, you know, very optimistic. There is something that I wanted to touch on right now. You mentioned something so very, very important, this concept of being okay with pivoting. So the thing with your postgraduate journey, you've got your objectives, you've got your aims, you've got your plan. This is how it's going to go. And overwhelmingly, you'll see it here. Thando just said it. I'm sure there are many among us who've experienced this. Things do not go according to plan. And, you know, it can go either way. You could sit on your couch for 3 months, being overwhelmed and really upset about it, and not, you know, is academia for me? I hate my supervisor. No one's helping me get out of this. Everything just feels so much. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. Are there people within this group who've not managed to be able to make it out of that? Is there some support that we can be lending each other to make sure that pivoting becomes easier, more manageable? How can we help each other to move on, to see that rainbow that Tando is speaking about? How do we do that? That's just something to think about. And Andre, it looks like you'd like.
Yes, good day, everyone. Yes, thank you, Tando. I joined late, but I think I can sort of feel what you felt. I've actually started working on my data analysis. It's a lot of work. Initially, I thought, okay, this thing seems easy, but then I'm plugging through. I'm still at objective one, and I realized, wow. And then I had to remind myself, look, you know what? It's a PhD. It's not a master's, not a first degree or bachelor's, and so it requires a lot more work. My wife actually reminded me that, look, remember it's a PhD you're doing, so it requires a lot more attention and dedication, a lot more discipline, and so I can understand that. I know there are times I'm working on my analysis, and there are times when, yes, you're doing the writing, but you just want to take a break. And for instance, over the weekend, my son's school had a cultural presentation. I just dropped everything and I just went out, and it was so refreshing. I came back, and yesterday I sat and I was able to accomplish at least 2 paragraphs of my results, and I felt, that is an accomplishment in itself. And I'm really pleased with this program that Ladine and the others put on for us. It has really helped me, shape my perspective and given me a lot of food for thought. And I really commend you guys for doing this. And thank you. Today is wonderful.
Thank you so much for your comment, Andre. And you mentioned something so very important, that most of us have families. I mean, we either come from families, we have families, and they are very likely part of the support structure that we need to get us through that. They are our cheerleaders getting us through it. They might also be our stressors while we're getting through it as well. But
I can say that too.
Yes, but balancing our family commitments and our academic, our professional commitments is something that really does weigh loads on many postgraduate students. So I guess that's another question to pose within this group. Who's balancing? Who's managing? What were the challenges that you've experienced? How can we support each other to ensure that a balance is maintained? That's very often the first question that I get at a professional development workshop as a woman. How do you manage? How do you balance the family? So I just want to put that out there. Think about it. If you'd like, you can pop it into the chat space as well. But what I'd like to do now is to get a perspective from somebody who's working or within the clinical field as well, because although there are similarities within the challenges that postgraduates face, there are differences. And if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, Lufunda, it's nice to see your name on the participants list. I miss you, and I love that your name is popped up here today, and that you can hear me, and that you are comfortable unmuting yourself to say hi. As somebody within the clinical space and completing a postgraduate degree, what sort of challenges have you experienced that may or may not even have been mentioned here today? Or are there any sorts of little words of wisdom for people who might be in that space and might need some support?
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
It's been a while. Hi, it's been a while since I was here. It hasn't been too easy actually. Like somebody else already said, when I started my PhD, I was like, okay, I have 3 years. That's a long time. So for the first 6 months, I'll do the protocol, and then I'll have it passed, and then I'll start the data collection, and then I'm going to finish. Boom. No, I remember the prof, actually my supervisor, Prof. Audas, said that a PhD for somebody who's working full-time and doing a PhD full-time is not very easy. You probably need more time than 3 years. At the time, I didn't believe her, actually. Now, my day looks like this. I'm in the hospital management, so I start my days at around 6:30, and I think I'm home usually after 6 o'clock in the evening. I have to find some time for class, and then I do my PhD work at night. If I'm going out for data collection, then I take leave, long leave, and things like that. I learned one thing throughout this the previous 3 years. The most important thing I learned is set realistic goals for yourself. So along the way, there's things that haven't worked too well, and there are things that have happened that I didn't anticipate. I guess time management is probably the most important thing, but also please remember that you also must prioritize your school. So in that, what I mean is some of the things obviously will have to suffer. You need to pick your battles well and what you can win. I remember when we were submitting our recently published paper, it was my second PhD paper. I got an utter rejection. I think you remember, Lenine, I spoke about it. Wasn't very nice after I did so much work, but it's been published in PLOS ONE now. The only thing to do is breathe, like somebody said, take a breather, walk around outside, come back. Sometimes you get so overwhelmed, like it happens to me. I'm in theater the whole day. And by the way, I'm alone for a population of 9.2 million people, the only ENT surgeon. So it's rather quite daunting. But I think what I've learned, like I said, is you have to manage your time properly. You need to know that many things won't work along the way. And sometimes, actually, you probably might not be in the position to do anything about it. So you better change your plan. I had one of my supervisory meetings with the prof yesterday, and I was expressing to her that I'm a little bit disappointed because I think I should be done by now. Of course, I'm now writing up. I'm done with all my data and things like that. But also what I realized was my protocol was bulky, and I think I tried to bite too much. It was a huge, huge thing. So my PhD was like in 3 parts. I'm done with them now, but I think realistic goals, I wasn't so wise actually. But having a very nice supervisor, I mean, I made it through, and I'm glad that we're nearly done. But I think I really would advise for people in the clinical setup and who are working full-time in hospitals, 3 years might just not be enough, and maybe you might require a little bit more time, especially if you are always in the hospital and you are a manager and things like that. Thanks a lot. I think that's about how much I can say. And remember
so
also,
well done.
Throughout as well, I've had to apply for funding. I got a scholarship on the way. I got funding from the Provincial Health Office. I got another scholarship just now, and Prof has asked me to apply for another scholarship. So all those things, I think it's also good that you show all those skills or all your capabilities throughout your PhD. And of course, attend meetings and conferences is very important. Thank you. Bye.
I'm so pleased. Well done. Congratulations. It's almost
Thank
over. And for those who have been here before, you would have heard the term doctorate nurse that has been brought up quite often during the session. And it's such an important concept to embrace. That was my failing during my PhD, I recall. You know, when you go into a PhD thinking, I'm just going to do this work and I'm going to get out with a PhD. And, you know, that's it. Life starts after your PhD, and you need to make sure that you are prepared for it. So ensuring that you are a great candidate for doctorateness, being able to be comfortable enough to write a grant, to supervise students, to contribute to the body of knowledge locally and globally, responsibly, to be able to communicate your work effectively, to get your point across. It's not only about writing a thesis, it's about growing yourself as a professional within this field of science. And the Tando mentioned it, Lufunda mentioned it, being exposed to those things that are very, very scary to do because we don't like rejection, like writing a grant, writing a paper, presenting at a conference, submitting work to your supervisor, seeing all that red typing in Word, all those comments. It's scary, but it offers us an opportunity to grow. I hope I got that as a take-home message from what Tando, Lufunda, and Fayaz were saying as well. That, you know, things can be scary, but there are also opportunities for you to learn, to develop, and to become this doctorate persona. Yeah. Would anybody else like to share their journey? I see Sinamele has sent a message in the chat for those who will be viewing the recording and might not see it immediately. Let me read it for you. Sinamele says, the part where you spoke about focusing on your journey, I agree with that. When I was doing my master's, I struggled a lot because most people I started with finished the experiments before I even started mine. People who came after me started and completed the experiments, and I was there feeling like I was not doing anything or not enough until I told myself to focus on my plate, and I found peace in my journey. That's wonderful. Thank you, Sinamele. It ties in so nicely with what actually everybody has said so far. Your journey is your journey. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. At least not to get you into a negative space. You do you. You'll get there. You'll get there. Get there.
Can I just add a few things, if you don't mind? Yeah, so I mean, as Andre and Lufunda were speaking, I just made a few notes, and even Tando, of what they were saying, just so like to add on to there. So like the first point is like, you know, we spend so much time on a specific thing, feeling depressed. And I realized also that the result you expect is not always the result that you're going to get. So therefore, you don't have to, you know, push yourself harder. I mean, obviously you have to push yourself, but you don't have to feel depressed as if you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just the way that science is, and the result that you like get may not be what you expected, but you still can use it. So don't always look for something in your experiments because there are deviations. You can get different results. Secondly, yeah, also, Lufunda spoke about finishing a PhD within 3 years. It's difficult for a lot of people. And even as a full-time person, even if you don't have a job, like a full-time job, a PhD itself is a full-time job, basically. And for a lot of people, you do over 3 years. And for me personally, I didn't manage to finish within 3 years because the pandemic happened. I registered late. And also, like, you know, balancing everything. We have families, as a lot of us do. And me personally, sometimes I feel like family didn't totally understand what I was going through. And I'm sure there was a lot of people who actually feel that way in this group. It's like, you know, your family, for most of us doing a PhD, it's like we're the first people to do a PhD in our families. So like, you know, like our families may not grasp the intensity of our situation. Therefore, like I found it was very important to have a support group outside my family, which was my peers, as in my colleagues at campus, at university, my peers, like, you know, who were doing a PhD with me, because like they were at the same level at me, they understood exactly what I was going through. And lastly, sorry, Tanda and Funa mentioned about going to conferences, presenting your work, all these grants write-up. Initially, it was intimidating for me as well. And for me, how I came out of my shell is like after I finished my master's, I decided to lecture a bit. And on the first day that I decided to actually lecture, I stood there and all like about a class of 200 students just looking at me, and it was intimidating at first, but you know, you got to just have confidence in yourself, because you need to tell yourself, okay, I've come this far and I can do this. I've done everything else in the past to get to this stage, and where I am right now, I can do this. And lastly, conferences also help you to interact with other people, to get ideas, but I found also it also provides you with an opportunity for collaborations, as well as taking the next stages in your career, because you often can meet with people and find you have a lot of similar goals, and perhaps it might be a next stage in your life that you want to consider, like doing a postdoc in another lab or working as a research scientist in another lab. So like conferences can be helpful for these reasons. Okay, I'll stop there. I think I'm done now.
Oh no, I'm sure there are more things to say. There are always more things to say.
Yeah, there's a lot more to say, but
and we have time. I guess I have a question to the group. You know, something that kept me going was the eye on the prize. You know, I had my own personal reason for why I am doing this PhD. And that actually, my answer to that got me through my down days. There were many down days during my PhD, but just keeping focused on why I'm doing this in the first place, who it's going to benefit, what my plan is down the line. I'm doing this for a reason. Is it worth dropping it now? I mean, and to be absolutely honest, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, there are days when you wonder, do I really need to be putting myself through this? You know, what else could I be doing? Is this the path for me? And what got me through that was major soul searching, and also a focus on the absolute benefit of what this PhD means to me, to my life, to my family, to society in general, because I feel like I'm going to make an impact somehow on people, on public health. But that's been my honest experience. The many days of wondering whether this really is for me, whether the journey is what should be done, whether the juice is worth the squeeze. You know what I mean? If this is something that you've experienced, you're welcome to raise your hand. You're welcome to add to the conversation as well. Lufunda, you've got your hand raised. You'd like to add to that?
Yes, Prof. Lenin. Actually, you bring up a very important point about motivation. First of all, I agree with you completely. You need to know why you're doing the PhD. I'll share a story, what's happened to me the last 3 years. So I'm practicing, and there's lots of people doing private work who've got a lot of time and making lots of money. And for me, all the extra minutes, I use it on school. And now people start asking me, man, you can make much more money. You don't need a PhD, including peers. But you see, I look at where I'm coming from and why I'm doing the PhD. Then it makes, it's obviously more important than making the money. I can always make the money later on. Now, you see, that is not the only problem I've had. Actually, I think Prof. Lenin, you might have remembered that I nearly died of COVID twice. I was very unwell for months. I think Prof. Alders was even afraid that I would probably quit school. So I nearly died from COVID twice. My data collection had to be stopped because it's clinical work. And whenever there was an outbreak, what you call these things? Whenever there was so much COVID, we had to stop collecting the data. And I've had to stop collecting the data 3 times. And at every one of those, I started thinking twice whether I should probably change the topic or perhaps I should stop. What kept me going was the reason that I had initially for doing the PhD. And then now you see 3 years down the line, the same people who were saying, man, you're losing so much money doing this, are the ones who actually want to do a PhD. So in fact, they want to come and do a PhD where I'm doing the PhD from. So yeah, I mean, that's absolutely critical. I'm glad that you brought that up. If you are not sure, or if your grounds for doing a PhD are weak, we've seen people quit along the way, and we've seen people stop, and people take very long when doing this work. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lufunda. Hearing you totally. And I'm sure Tando has something to add to that too.
Oh, that was so encouraging. I just wanted to add to what you'd said about keeping your eye on the ball. I think also just remembering that you are enough, and that we've spoken in the past about the imposter syndrome. And you think, should I be here? Do I have a place here? And I just wanted to encourage someone, because I'll constantly need to remind myself, you're enough, you earned your place. And based on that, I think that also really helps when I'm keeping my eye on the ball and remembering that I'm enough, that I can do it because I'm enough. So I just want to encourage someone who could be like, who's like, am I enough? Imposter syndrome's like all over, and yeah, just reminding someone that they're enough.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? It's not only for yourself. It's for your peers as well. You can, the person sitting next to you, you can see them spiraling, and you know what spiraling is like. I feel like we are in a position, because we've been there, to be able to help this person. Here's my journey. You can take from it what you'd like. I know what you're going through. You're not alone. Something as simple as you are not alone can help as well. In addition to the reminder of yourself of you are enough. I'd like to. Oh, Nomusa, you've got a hand up. I'm very curious. Let's hear.
Hi, Prof. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I just want to add something to what Fayaz said in terms of family. I love my family, but they don't understand. They don't understand what I'm doing. They're like, you're gonna be a doctor, but you're gonna work in the lab. You're not gonna inject people. It's a mess. But I try to explain, and they try to be supportive. So sometimes just having people who are your peers that understand what you're going through, and being able to laugh about certain situations, and just cry together and always encourage each other, I think that's very important. So I agree with everything that everybody has said, and this is such a great conversation, and I think we need more of these. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your input, Nomusa. You reminded me of something that my family tells me often, or told me during my PhD. So when is the money coming? You studied for so long. When are you going to be employed? When are you going to contribute? So that also adds a whole other dimension to the pressures that we are already under, trying to get through this PhD. I love what Lufunda says, actually. The money will come. Yeah, I thought that at one time. I'm still getting there too. But I thought I'd put that on the table as well. That family can also put this added real life pressure of, you could be earning now. You could be supporting us now. You could be helping in a different way now, but here you are in your room trying to do a PhD, stressed out. And the importance of making sure that you have a good support system, a cheerleader. On this cheerleader trip, having people around you who are as invested in your interest in this PhD, in your plan, as what you are, is so important. Else we stray, we forget, we spiral, and it's disturbing. It happens so often. We haven't touched on a very, very important concept, mentorship. Peer mentorship is so important. We learn from each other, we support each other. We have a supervisor who's either given us a project if you're a master's student, or worked with us to develop a project if you're a PhD student. And they have this level of guidance. But supervision and mentorship are quite different things. And I'm curious, could I ask the people who have spoken, or anyone in the audience, participant who are participating in this discussion today, to please let me know, is it worthwhile having a mentor on board to help you along your journey? Do you have a mentor? Did you have a mentor? Did you have 1, 2, 3 mentors? Were they in your same institute? Is it worthwhile to have someone else besides your supervisor guide you along this professional development path? There were many questions in there.
Can I speak to that?
Oh, hello, Sandy Manuel James. Please.
Yeah, sorry, I joined a bit late, so I was in another meeting. But I just wanted to start by saying yes, and not one, actually many. I also want to add that those mentors don't have to be people with big titles like professor. I think starting with your colleagues, they know a lot of things that you don't know, especially those who've been around for some time, who have been in the system. They will give you a lot of useful information that you would imagine you wouldn't probably get from your supervisors. We need to understand that supervisors are very busy people. They're busy with papers, they're busy with grants, they're busy with conferences, busy with marking, busy with teaching work. And so relying on them to know and provide for you everything you need to excel in your PhD is being unfair to yourself. And this is one mistake that I think most of us make at the beginning of our PhDs, and only realize later that we can, lean on other people to get to where we want to get to. So the sooner you realize that, the more quickly you'll advance and progress, because you have the support network that you need.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sam. Tanda would like to comment.
Yeah, just to add to what San was saying, I just want to add that it's so important. And even if it's people that aren't in your institution, I just wanted to share like a really beautiful example of mentorship. I'd really been speaking to my mentor before I started my PhD about what I was wanting to do before my PhD at the end of my master's. And I actually found out sometime later that they'd nominated me as part of some program to go do a PhD in an area where I'd wanted to. And that came at a time where I actually didn't even have options for my PhD. And I think that's such like a small but big step for someone to actually nominate you to do something because they've known you personally, right? They haven't read my work, they haven't read a paper I'd written, but based on our relationship, they could vouch on my character. So just beside like the advice that they can give, or the direction that they can give, they can actually open opportunities. They can open another world. They have different connections. They've got different experiences to share. yeah, I just really wanted to encourage, and I think Prof. Lenine spoke about like even just like looking at someone and like that you look up to and think and like following them up, maybe even on LinkedIn. And you know, initially I thought when she was saying like I'm like stalkerish, then I was like, actually this could be great for me. You know, and then I realized actually not only do mentors like help advise you, but they actually also motivate you and inspire you, you know, because sometimes you hear their stories and you think, I can do it too. I can make it there. And I know for me, part of the really exciting moments about like having mentors is hearing their story and seeing a bit of myself in them and seeing myself at the end of the tunnel saying, actually, I can make it through. So I think besides the normal ordinary things that we speak about direction and networking and things like that, but actually they help you see yourself at the end and let you realize that you can get there, you can make it there. The dream that you have, the goal that you have, the aspiration, it's achievable. Yeah, as Lufunda was speaking about realistic goals, your goal is realistic. No matter how big it is, it's realistic. If someone's done it, you can do it.
Fantastic. Lufunda, you want to comment on that or add to it?
Yeah, those mentors are called morale boosting mentors. So there are mentors who are straightforward mentors, and there are those that act like family. So it doesn't matter whether they help you through the paper or they don't. The fact that you have someone's spirit hovering around you, trust me, it is like in class. That one person who's always first in class is very difficult to beat. You know the reason? Psychological. It's all psychological just here. Because they have that thing that I'm the best in this class. Trust me, to beat them, you must work twice as hard. So when problems come and you know that there's people around you who make your work easy, it is psychological. They don't have to come and sit with you, write this paper like this. You just get that energy. So it is very important. Actually, not one, not two, as many as you can have. Of course, not destructive ones, the good ones. Thanks. Bye.
I love that. So we will be having more discussions within this postgrad support group about mentorship. Who are these good mentors that Lufunda is speaking about? How do we find them? How do we optimize this relationship so that you do actually have a wonderful opportunity to meet the goals, the professional goals that you have? I agree with everyone who spoke about mentorship in a positive way here. Yes, find a mentor aligned with your professional goals, of course, not just because you want a mentor for some random reason, but because you want to grow within in a particular way. And this person is a great candidate to be able to help you, nurture you, walk with you along the journey and open doors for you. Yeah, that's a lovely concept. Thank you so much to all the participants in this meeting. Thanks to the people who spoke, thanks to the people in the chat. I just want to make sure that you come back again to enjoy this wonderful, nurturing, constructive experience, that there is a wealth of information that we can be sharing among each other, so in such a supportive way. We are not alone. Some might have had that idea before coming to this support group. Oh, my problems are mine alone. No one is going to relate to me and my story. And I hope that you have experienced something very different, a feeling of community, and you're a part of something special. Thank you so much, everybody, for being involved. Thank you, the speakers. Thank you, the chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will see you next week when we continue discussing holistic development. See you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.